All right, and welcome to a overview video for the Creality CR10 V2 FDM 3D printer. In this video, we're going to cover pretty much everything there is to know about the CR10 V2. So it does come with a USB SD card adapter. This is great for downloading STLs, doing your slicing, and then uploading those G-codes to your 3D printer. And what you see here, this is the power supply and motherboard and controls for the 3D printer. It's all located in this box. It connects umbilical cord style to your hot plate extruder on the right there. So this is where you can upload everything. For beginners, I recommend sites like Thingiverse. This is a great place to upload and download STLs and 3D models. So we talked about downloading 3D models. You can use stuff like Tinkercad, that's free software. Blender, that's also free software to make your own 3D models. But even so, once you have a 3D model completed and you want to 3D print it, you're going to need slicer software. Ultimaker Cura is a free slicer software. I very much recommend it. One of my favorites, another one that's paid software, is Simplify 3D. It's about $150, but you can sometimes find it on sale, which is nice, and it is great for beginners. Does a lot of stuff such as supports, infill, figures a lot of that stuff out for you when 3D printing. So you'll see me, I have this 3D model on the screen right now, and you can modify and plan out your print with this slicer software. And then you could save it to your SD card, plug it in your 3D printer, and print away. So once we have our G-code loaded onto our SD card, we can put that in the 3D printer, turn it on. Of course, make sure it's plugged in before you turn it on. And the Creality home screen will come up, and that informational HUD will pop up. The HUD has the temperature of the nozzle, temperature of the print bed, and just some other basic information for you. The Creality CR10 V2 comes with a filament spool holder, and what we have here is we have some 1.75 white PLA, which we're going to load up into the printer now. So there's basically a scroll wheel here with a push button, and you can just click the button and then scroll to prepare. And what we're going to do right now is we're going to get our filament nozzle heated up so we can load up our PLA filament. So I'm going to go to preheat, select that, and I'm going to select PLA end. If you select preheat PLA, it'll heat up both the filament nozzle and the bed as well. So if you're have it level, if everything's set up already, and you just want to preheat prior to your print, this is a selection you could make, but just for now, I'm going to do just the nozzle, and we'll see that starting to heat up. So one thing I really like about the CR10 V2 is it does come with a filament break sensor, which is really cool. If something goes wrong, the print will actually pause and let you reload filament and resume printing afterwards, which is pretty neat. So this is an FDM printer, so fused deposition modeling. So basically you're loading up this PLA spaghetti into this hot nozzle, right? And it extrudes out like icing on a cake. And the G-code tells this 3-axis printer where it needs to be while it's extruding that plastic, right? So you have your X-axis, Y-axis, and Z-axis. And that's how this printer works. So I got the hot end up to temperature. So I'm actually removing this filament right now. In order to do that, I'm actually going to push it in a little bit, extrude a little bit, and then pull it out. And that's how you remove the filament from a CR10 V2. So basically you just want to push it in a little bit. You're going to see that filament extrude out of the hot end, and then I'm going to pull it out. And then you'll see the end here. I'm just going to cut that, the end of this plastic off before I reuse it again. So after you're done Ned Starking your filament, you can just roll it back up on the spool and put it up and change it out with a different filament of your choice. So filaments come in a variety of colors, plastic types, etc. A lot of these you can pretty much just find on Amazon, whatever you want. And of course this one runs 1.75. So now that I've taken it out, I'm gonna load it up and I'm gonna push it through the filament break sensor. Again, that's kind of finicky, so you kind of have to play with it. Sometimes you can pull it out and kind of bend it a little bit so it kind of goes through the hole correctly. And then you're gonna push it through the Bowden extruding unit. And so, you know, what that extruding unit does is once the filament's loaded and you have the G-code, you know, running and everything, it kind of has a little gear there, and you'll see the gear, and it will actually slightly push that filament through the extruder. So as the G-code is telling where the nozzle needs to be, you know, it's extruding it out like icing the plastic and building your model. So that's pretty much how the 3D printer, at least an FDM 3D printer, works. So again, we're gonna push this through. There's a little spring that you have to apply pressure to kind of let that get through the tubing, and you're just gonna slightly press it and you're gonna see the filament extrude out of the bottom. And once you start seeing that, you know it's charged, it's good to go. You're loaded up and ready to print. So from the HUD, I'm going to turn it clockwise. I'm going to go to prepare. I'm going to click on auto home, and the filament nozzle will automatically auto home in the XYZ axis so I can level the print bed. So in my opinion, the biggest difference between a good print and a bad print is how level the bed is. So I'm going to auto home and disable the steppers here on this Creality 3D printer. And this printer head will auto home on the X, Y, and Z axis. So you'll see it in the kind of the bottom right there. And now that the stepper motors are shut down, I can move the bed and the nozzle freely. So what I want to do now is I want to level this bed, and this doesn't have the auto leveler on it, but I actually think the auto leveler is kind of finicky, and it's just more stuff to break and more stuff that can go wrong. So to manually level the bed, you can use just a basic sheet of paper, put it on the bed of the 3D printer, and you're going to want to level it in the four corners of the square here. And you'll see these little wheels on the bottom, and you can actually kind of crank up the nuts on those springs and bring the bed up or down. And so what you want to do is you kind of want to like put the paper under the nozzle, shift it back and forth as you tighten or loosen that corner of the bed until it's, you know, how do I put this? Not too tight, but not too loose. So it'll be kind of touching the nozzle, but it just slides back and forth just right. And so once you find that perfect spot where the paper can move freely, but you're starting to feel the nozzle, if that makes sense, you know that it's in a perfect place. And you want it like that in all four corners. And then once the four corners are done, you can put it in the center of the bed. Do that once more, and again, you'll feel it. It's just right where the paper is just kind of touching the nozzle, but still sliding freely. And then you'll know that your bed is level. So again, you can feel the nozzle, but the paper still moves freely. You know it's perfect, you know it's level, and it's ready to print. And again, the biggest difference between a good print and a bad print, in my opinion, is just how well did you level your bed before you started the print. What's really nice about this Creality CR10 is it does come with a glass bed, and glass beds are very cool too. And it also has like some texture to it. So you don't really need hairspray or Elmer's glue on the hotbed. Honestly, I just run it as is, and it's pretty much perfect, you know, adhesion every time. So now from the controls, if we go to move axis, you can actually manually move your axis. I'm going to move the Z axis. You can move in different increments. I'm going to do 10 millimeters, and then you just kind of rotate clockwise or counterclockwise to move your axis. So I'm moving it in the Z axis. So we're going to see that Z axis start to rise up. So our filament hot end is going to rise away from the bed. So again, something that makes this printer really cool is it does come with a glass bed, and you can buy multiple glass beds so you can kind of hot swap stuff as you print. The texture on this makes it so you don't need hairspray. If you had just a straight up borosilicate glass bed, I would recommend using something like Aquanet hairspray just to help with that initial adhesion. Again, that's a very important aspect to a print when you're first starting out. But again, with this bed, you don't need this. But if you are having trouble, Aquanet is always helpful. So I'm going to just spray some Aquanet as an example. You know, something like this helps with initial adhesion with your print, which is very important for a successful 3D print. Back to the HUD, if you go to print from TF, you can select your model that is on the SD card, and then the printer will start to preheat, and then it will start to print your 3D model on the build plate. So to kind of walk you through the parts of this 3D printer, you know, we already talked about the borosilicate glass bed that comes with the CR10 V2. This is the Bowden extruder. This is the hot end right here. So the plastic is extruded through this end, and it's like icing on a cake as it builds your 3D model. And you'll see that little bronze gear piece. It's going to actually push that filament into the hot end and kind of meter in the plastic as it's building your 3D model. So a quick PSA, this is a bird's nest. This is what you get when things go wrong, when, you know, bed adhesion doesn't go right or something doesn't go right with your 3D print. So always watch your print in the beginning stages. So once heating's done, you're going to see the printer extrude a little bit of filament on the side of the build plate prior to beginning your print. And so once that is done, the printer will begin to print per the instructions that you uploaded in your slicer software. So as a 3D printer continues to print, it'll eventually be finished and it'll cool down. And once it's cool, you can use a spatula and pull it off the build plate. However, a lot of times once 3D prints cool down, sometimes they just pop off the build plate just because they cool down, the plastic shrinks a bit, so they pop off easy. So it's always nice to have an extra build plate just so you can kind of hot swap build plates so you can just continue printing on and off, right? There's no waiting for prints to cool, etc. So I hope you found this introduction to the Creality CR10 V2 helpful. I did put some specs up here on the screen just to compare it to the V3 and other 3D printers. Overall, it's a great beginner printer, intermediate printer. You can upgrade it and do a lot of stuff with it, and it just runs and runs and runs and never seems to break. And if stuff does break, it's easy to fix. So definitely recommend this printer, and hopefully you found this introduction video helpful. Thanks for watching.